Welcome to Below the Line, where we talk about working in Hollywood from the crew perspective. My name is Skid. I'm a former assistant director and your host. This episode is part 2 of our Directors Guild discussion and a lead into our Oscar coverage, which will start next week. Specifically today, we're discussing the DGA nominees for First Time Feature. Our panel is the same as last episode, but just in case we've got brand new listeners, let's run through introductions once again. Katie Carroll, First AD. Good to see you.
Thanks, Skid. Happy to be back.
Bill Hardy, First AD and sometime producer. Welcome back as well.
Hello, Skid. Thanks for having me again.
And then finally, Shaun O'Banion, PGA, not DGA, but always welcome to this show, as long as you're comfortable with us teasing you a little.
Thanks for having me, Skid.
Okay, team, 5 films, which we will discuss alphabetically by each director's last name. As a reminder, for our listeners, there may be spoilers. First up, Rada Blank for the 40-year-old version. If you allow me a brief bit of self-promotion, I interviewed the cinematographer of this film, Eric Bronco, last year here on Below the Line. If listeners are interested, it was season 6, episode 8. What do people think of this movie?
I really liked it. Thought it was maybe 15 minutes too long. Could find a few 10 to 30 second clips in there to cut and move it along just a little bit faster. And maybe that's first time director learning curve, especially since she's also the writer, the producer, the star. There's a lot going on there for Rada, but for someone who's doing this for the first time and taking on all those roles, still overall excellent movie.
Yeah, I actually didn't know. I purposely didn't look anything up. So I kind of thought from the artwork that I was going to be watching a drama. So I was pleasantly surprised that it was a comedy. And, then I saw Lena Waithe's name in the credits and was like, oh, okay. This is, she's sort of being anointed by somebody who's doing really well. And I just really enjoyed it. I thought it was a unique take on the story of struggling to be a creative person. And I love the photography, Skid, for your previous guest. The black and white was beautiful. And just, really overall, I do agree it was maybe a little bit too long, but I really liked it.
I think to what both of you guys said, the fact this is the one of 3 of the movies in this category were stage plays before they were movies. And this was probably the most, based on the clip at the end of the movie, I think it's the more like a one-woman show she did or something, or a collection of performances. Anyway, that probably is where, that transfer of a stage to the film is probably where that extra 15 minutes that could have gotten cut. I was like, 2 hours and 4 minutes. Oh my God, what the hell? And then, it's the fact that her name is, she did everything. So it's nothing that bad, but it's just a little bit too long.
Yeah, if that's the worst you can say about a movie,
exactly.
It's good.
Exactly.
I also really enjoyed it. I think it's a great film. And John, as you mentioned, sort of that capturing of the artist's struggle and done from an angle and a point of view that we don't often see. And so the fact that really, as you pointed out, she birthed the whole thing with some collaborators and, to pull it together, I think is really a credit to her as the director and well recognized in this category. Besides being too long, I did think some of the scenes, some of the tonal things were just a little off for me. It felt very much, maybe that's also from first time director, that just sometimes it didn't seem to quite flow as well. But I think that's a huge challenge that we see a lot when people play all these roles. Or do all of you think it could have been fixed just with some tighter editing overall?
I mean, yeah.
It's kind of hard to say. I mean, I don't even know if all of those people were actors. I don't know how, she was coming in contact with a lot of people, and maybe there were some first timers in there. So I kind of do feel like the editing could have supported those performances a little and maybe helped.
Mm-hmm. I think I liked some of the B storylines, and I'm afraid with too much editing, those B storylines either get shaved down enough that you don't know what's happening, or they go away altogether. And I thought that really lent some more to this world, that it's not just about this, that it's about her teaching and discovering things about her students and about other things besides her work, this singular issue that kind of helped round out this whole world overall.
That's a good reminder about the kids, because kids are tough, and even for experienced directors, to get performances out of kids, young adults even, is a real challenge that she tackled wholeheartedly in this, for sure. There's a lot of, that's a lot of the B story, as you say, Katie. The next film on our list, director is Fernando Frias de la Pera for I'm No Longer Here. This is another Netflix film.
I think I'm the only other one that saw this movie.
I think it's you and me, Bill. Yeah.
Yeah, I really liked it. And I don't know whether it was because I was watching it at midnight on Friday, getting ready for this podcast, but I was prepared for something else, I guess. Having done Step Up and Step Up to the Streets, I thought maybe it was kind of like at first the Mexican Step Up. But then I realized that was I was like, well, if you really dumb down this movie, then it could be Step Up. But then but I'm going to stop talking about that world. It was the cumbia.
Yeah, I didn't quite get the pronunciation out of it either.
The type of music that was created. I had to do research. It was created in Colombia and then spread throughout Latin America. And these kids live in Monterey, and they are really into cumbia. And the hairstyle is apparently directly associated with the style of music too. These kids had crazy haircuts, which was really cool. Like.
Crazy haircuts, very specific style of dress. Really, that entire world in Monterey, Mexico. And the movie goes back and forth between what's going on in Monterey and then this new life in New York in a way that I thought actually worked really surprisingly well.
Yeah. I didn't know what was going on at first. It's this kid by himself with guys he doesn't fit in with, working in New York. Another, much like Minari, like yesterday in the other conversation, a foreign language film that takes place partially in America. So that's an interesting juxtaposition as far as these categories go, ours versus the academies, I guess. And then cutting back to Monterey, and then, all of a sudden you've got today's headlines in the news blowing up in the major point of this story. This kid can't stay in Monterey because he witnessed a gang hit and has to go to New York and gets across the border however he can.
It feels like it's been a while since I've seen it now, but they cut back and forth, and there are some time jumps, right? Like we're getting the stories. We jumped in the past quite a bit until finally this two times sort of, as we said, spoiler alert, he ends up back in Mexico at the end. And so things sort of catch up in the present there. But while normally that's a conceit in film that I don't like, it did not bother me in this. And I thought that the slow reveal of what happened before felt in line with what was being shown in New York, but not like some sort of mystery that they were keeping secret. In other words, the back and forth with time didn't bother me in this, when normally that's something that I have a real pet peeve about.
Yeah, I had to take I was focusing on the title because I always wonder when those things lose their meaning in the translation. But I think it works with I'm No Longer Here, works in both locations, in New York and when he's back in Mexico. You know what I mean? Like it's a ebb and flow.
Now, from a AD perspective on this one, it really is two full-sized movies that you're trying to get done here. And what happens in Mexico, well, you've got large crowds, you've got gunfire, you've got all of these kids.
Yeah, no one in the cast had their picture. This is not a good standard, but on IMDb, none of them had, nobody was a professional, I guess is how you would put it. One ICE agent had a picture.
And then New York is equally daunting as far as, I think you're shooting on actual locations. I think you're shooting on a rooftop. There's still a lot of minors involved, big scenes, the big party scene.
Yeah, the dance stuff, that's really the only comparison to Step Up. But having been in those situations, they could be a lot of fun to shoot and very difficult at the same time, because you want to capture the appropriate energy. But how do you get that going when you're like, every 10 seconds, you're like, okay, everybody be quiet. Now we got to start over again.
Having shot in Manhattan for one day, there's also the thing of like, how soon before the Teamsters show up and shut us down, when you're doing an indie.
Yeah, I don't know a lot about the history of this one. There's a New York unit, but again, it seems like a huge part of the film. But they did have a separate AD team for New York than they did in Mexico. The first director carried over, but the other folks they had locals working those angles. It's a little surprising to me that Netflix didn't push this more. I was sort of surprised to see it pop up. I don't think I actually even got a DVD of this one. I could be wrong because I have DVDs for everything it seems that Netflix has ever done. But I don't remember getting this in the mail. And if it did, it came out well before.
It actually is
award
on
season went under, right?
Well, again, on IMDb, it's actually listed as 2019, which I found very interesting. I don't think they went the other way too, but that might be an international versus domestic loophole.
As far as when they released it.
I don't think we got a disc either. I'm not sure, but yeah, like you guys, I mean, I must have gotten 27 Netflix screeners.
So
I don't think this is part of it.
It's not my pick for this category, but this movie really stayed with me. Here we are, I had a lot to say, and at the same time, it didn't got any kind of representation at all.
For a first-time director, I think it's an incredibly ambitious film, both in its subject matter and in what they're trying to do with the, as we mentioned, the multiple locations. So, hats off to them on that. The next film on our list is Regina King for One Night in Miami, also based on a play, Bill, as you referenced earlier.
Yeah, and this was my pick for this category. It was one of my 5 for the best director category and of a feature. Of course, I have worked with Regina a couple of times too, and I like her a lot. She was very nice to my mother.
I mean, aren't we all, Bill, generally nice to your mother?
No, but it was an excellent movie. I had heard about it, the play, and wanted to see the story. I've had Malcolm on the mind a lot this year, and the subject matter felt timely, as well as I think it's a powerful story, and performances were great too.
Katie and Shaun, you both saw this. Let's get you back in on this conversation as well.
Yeah, I loved it. I only saw it, a few days ago. I was super impressed with it. I thought it was, again, another really well-told story. I thought a lot of her choices were very, very interesting, like staying on one character as they eavesdrop essentially on another conversation, as opposed to traditionally going and covering that conversation. And that gives you a whole different feel for that conversation. Sticking true to who the characters were during this conversation. I mean, it's clearly a stage play, mostly all in one room, except for a few taken away. That's the one thing that was sort of lacking, was the I'm not going to say production value, because the room worked really, really well for what it was. But when you have a stage play that essentially takes place in one room, it's nice to go out and see the world a little bit better. I think that's one way that 40-year-old version kind of did it a little bit better. You saw more of New York, you saw more of her world, but it's hard to tell the story and not leave the hotel room. So I don't know, I'm contradicting myself, but at the same time, I mean, I loved it. The colors were so bright and brilliant, and they told that story really, really well. There was always a very clear voice as to who was speaking and when, and how she covered that. I thought it was really well done.
Yeah, I generally agree. Yeah, I mean, I thought photographically it was beautiful. I love the design of the room. I love the costumes. I thought all 4 of those actors were fantastic. Especially, I don't know his name, but the actor who played Ali, he's the only one I think I hadn't heard of before or seen in something. And I was really impressed by the sort of the presence that he brought to it. I also think, for me, I was sort of looking at Ma Rainey's Black Bottom and this in a similar thing, because they're doing a similar thing and telling a story in a single location. They're both based on plays. I felt like Regina did a much better job in opening it up in certain ways. And even the scene where they sit in the car in front of the liquor store, and it felt Miami to me. Like, she probably shot it in Atlanta or something, but I was like,
actually,
Okay, yeah, but I was like, I feel like it's of this place, of this time, and I just thought she did a really great job.
I think it's not my favorite on the list. I think it's very impressive. I think it's solid. I think it felt a little more by the numbers. I think it was well put together, and she had a great team working with her. And again, I don't see any missteps. I do think the DGA has a soft spot for actors that become directors, and so if I were to handicap the race, I think she's probably a favorite on this list. But as you said, several of you really enjoyed the film, so to her credit, there's nothing wrong with it. Is it? When we talk about first time director, I also think actors have an advantage. The one thing, and I'm sure we've said on the show many times, that directors are completely responsible for is guiding the actors. And so actors it's a natural role, I think, to move from acting into directing. In some ways, I guess I'm not, with that first time idea, I'm not as impressed by first time directors who are actors as I am by some of the other folks who are in this category.
And she's also, she has directed before. This is her first feature, but she's directed a lot of episodes of television. The procedural series that she was a performer on, she's done a few episodes of and things. So it's a bit of a cheat, but you're probably right, Skid, that she may have the leg up.
Plus, she's so well loved in Hollywood. Like Bill said, I've never had the chance to work with her. I've never met anyone who has worked with her who didn't enjoy working with her. So that alone, given that she probably at least knows, or is at least only one degree of separation from many people within the DGA, like, oh, I'm voting for my friend, but it's like, you also want to lift your friend up. Like, hey, you did a good, like, if this movie was crap, she would not even have been nominated. It would be like, oh, good job, but better luck next time, So there's a little bit of helping out your friend, but you're helping out your friend who you see has talent and can continue.
And I think that in the stage play, we haven't started talking about it yet, but Florian Zeller, is that his name? It was his play that he then directed as a movie, whereas this is somebody else's play that Regina is taking on and directing. So Florian had someone I never met, but has the option to work his stuff out with the play, whereas Regina's got a little bit harder. She's got to draw her own diagrams and stuff.
The same thing with Rana Blank. It's her play. So maybe that gives Regina King a leg up in that she's coming to it with a different point of view and maybe isn't as married to it or isn't as in love with it. And she can shape it a little bit better, more.
Yeah.
I do think, since we brought up Rana Blank again, Bill, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's based on a one-woman show, but it's almost inspired by the one-woman show. The one-woman show does not follow the beats of the movie. I think the movie is Jen of an idea of things that she'd been working on, but I don't think
right, which I think may have played into why it's longer. If you're like, I really like this bit, I really like this bit, and now you've combined them into one bit, it's harder to pull jokes out of, to shorten scenes and such.
That's true.
I think if I do a little introspection, I am probably also holding a slight grudge against Regina King in this category because of Bradley Cooper. I think, didn't we give it to him when he got nominated for A Star Is Born?
That was my pick. That was my pick that year too. I really like Star Is Born.
Oh my goodness!
Which was even, I loved having the conversation that it was the play of movies because it was the third time it was being made.
Well, certainly nothing, no dissatisfaction if Regina King does win this year. As I've agreed with all of you, I think it's a great film. Moving on to the fourth film on our list, Darius Martyr for Sound of Metal.
That's the one I just finished watching earlier today. Another one that I loved it. I thought it was really, really well done. Riz Ahmed is just brilliant in everything he does. So it's hard to see what might have been lacking that Riz Ahmed managed to raise up, because it's, other than One Night in Miami, it's the only one with like professional actors. You have a whole lot of other like non-actor actors. So where the director might be needed a little bit more, maybe less. Maybe the actors depend on the director a little bit more. I don't know. But yeah, Riz Ahmed, it's so brilliant in everything he does. But that was one where I had no idea, but I'm really happy I listened to it with my surround sound, because I didn't realize how critical sound would be in that. And that was so well done. And so I would really like the way he directed it so that you completely understood what Riz Ahmed was feeling, hearing, even just not subtitling the sign language at the beginning, because he doesn't know what's going on. So why should you know what's going on? And only once he starts to learn it is it subtitled. I loved it. I thought it was really, really well done.
Yeah, it was. It's actually probably my choice for the category, and part of it is because of the sound work that they did. I mean, I looked up stuff afterwards, how they were miking Riz in order to literally hear him taking breaths, and the way that he would begin to interpret sound once it started slipping away, or once he got the cochlear implant. When the woman first turns on that computer, and it's like, God, it's just fantastic. And I also think, Riz Ahmed, don't get me started. The guy's brilliant. But that other actor who got a Best Supporting Actor nomination, Paul Raci, is just beautiful. He's heartbreaking and beautiful. And he got ignored by a lot of the critics groups. So I was thrilled that he got BAFTA and Oscar nominations. But I think, I don't know, I feel like Darius Marder just really understood exactly how he needed to tell the story. And I really felt a lot of that in the shot selection, in the use of sound. And I think that's why it's my favorite of this.
It wasn't my favorite, but the sound was the best part for me, for sure. And I think it will be it'll probably be the direct competition to my pick for Mank, with all my echoes and oldie time sound effects that I liked there. And I also really have to say that I was happy in the story that I'm just sick of people getting off heroin for the first time. I was very happy to see someone trying to stay off of heroin. The whole relationship with the going back into rehab when you haven't actually relapsed, just to maintain, I think was a very interesting part that we don't get to see in movies and stuff. Everybody wants to focus on the initial, because that's the happy story. Oh, they stopped using. Like, yeah, you still got a long time working here. And I think that Riz did a really beautiful job showing that too. And Paul Raci, is that his name? I'm always impressed when I start seeing actors using sign language, because of the whole Louise Fletcher story and getting screwed out of the Altman movie. I'm always for people that actually had to learn sign language for some other reason in their life, being able to say, hey, here we are in the movies too.
Yeah, just another language. It's someone who knows, like, okay, I know French, and now I'm also bilingual. It's another language, essentially.
Yeah, Paul is a child of deaf adults. So his parents, he grew up in that community. Riz, from what I've read, spent 7 months learning both percussion and ASL, which is,
I was wondering,
wild.
Is he a drummer? Because he definitely interesting. Because
he's a DJ, and a rapper in the UK, okay. But had no experience with drums.
But still, that's someone who knows beats, who can learn and distinguish the small idiosyncrasies between different levels of beats and different. So at least he comes to it with a little bit of experience in that world, as opposed to me, who has nothing, like that kind of thing. And the one thing that as I was watching it, like, I lost all sense of time of how long he was there. I couldn't tell if he was there for 1 month, 6 months, and I don't know. I like to think, when he shows up in Paris, like, how much time has passed? Like, I think you would have a different reception, or might expect a different reception based on how long you had been apart from your lover. So if it had only been a month, okay, also look how far he's advanced with only a month. But if it's been 6 months, like, that's like 10%, 25%, I'm doing bad math, of how long he was with this woman before that they were separated. So that was the one thing I kind of wish I knew how long they had been separated, because that brings a different expectation to when you show up again.
I think that's an interesting question on that, Katie, because one of the things that I do like about the movie, which would, I think, make it difficult to sort of define things the way you're asking, is that it didn't follow some sort of arc where now I'm setting up for the next bit of the journey. It's sort of, there was a sort of, we are with them in this moment, and these moments are chained together. But that really worked for me. And I think it goes to your point as well, Bill, where the issues of his heroin addiction really come up in a, I think, a really beautiful way. It's layered into the story where there is no, it's not obvious. It's not even stated that I used to be a heroin addict. He basically is responding to a question when he asks how long, and not naively perhaps, but I hadn't even recognized as part of his character. But then it made a lot of sense with the things that happened before, and sort of, I think just the story unfolded in a way that was really skilled. I think this may be my choice. It's actually one of my favorite films of the year overall. And I think what impresses me as far as earning accolades in this category is just so many elements: the sound design, the story layering. I wasn't aware, Shaun, that there was that much sort of prep with the actors as far as getting ready for it. That shows a singularity of vision. I think that I'm really impressed that Darius was able to pull this together. The other interesting thing here is there's only one member of the team listed. That is the unit production manager, Amy Green. I mean, there must have been ADs there. Do you think Amy just did it all? Like, Katie, you just watched it. Did they separate ADs in the credits, or did it just scroll right through those folks?
Watched it, but then I had to run to the restroom right afterwards. And I think I skipped that part. I hate skipping the credits, but so I let it roll because I wanted to listen to it, but I don't remember.
You shouldn't run to the bathroom. Just a little callback for fans of the show. You should never run to the bathroom. Skid will tell you that.
Yeah, not unless you got a spotter. All right. So moving on to the fifth director on this list, Florian Zeller is nominated for The Father. Bill, as you mentioned earlier, it's based on the play that he wrote, but then has been adapted for the screen by him.
And really beautifully, I thought. Like it definitely is another one of those 2 or 3 location kind of things, but then it plays into the story how many actual locations there are. I really enjoyed the movie. I enjoyed the way it was done. Performances across the board were great. It's another one of those, God, it's weird to say about a dementia or Alzheimer's film, but there are a lot of Easter eggs. Like there's the sets changing in ways that it needs to for the story, not in ways that are, it's got to be very deliberate. And I think I will, as weird as that sounds, I'll get enjoyment out of looking for that stuff on repeat viewings.
Katie, I think you said you had not seen this one. Is that right, Katie?
I hadn't. I knew what it was about. It was on my list. I just didn't have a chance to see it. I will watch it. But I didn't realize that they did that. And that's a fascinating, I love when directors think of little, or maybe it was even written into the script, who knows. But those little Easter eggs and little moments that start to affect the audience. And so the audience can see everything from your protagonist's point of view, like Sound of Metal. So I love when you can see everything just differently, and how the director can shape how the audience is viewing a movie that way. I find that fascinating.
Katie, the reason I asked directly, because earlier you mentioned the films that had professional actors. This is one that obviously not beyond just that it's Anthony Hopkins in the lead role, but the supporting actors across the board are doing amazing work with this material, where they're changing roles and it's all sort of layering in. It's another movie where I think Florian had a vision for how it was going to come together.
What I guess about The Father, I mean, you guys have kind of covered it all already. I wasn't looking forward to watching the film. I have history in my family with dementia and things like that, and then I'm actually in the midst of dealing with something, peripheral to that at the moment. But I did watch it 2-3 weeks ago and really liked it. And part of what I appreciated about it was what you guys have touched on, which is the layering of levels of confusion to the audience. Some of it you're picking up on, some of it is very clear, and others are very almost imperceptible. You have to be looking for them, whether it's the color of a wall or something in the set dressing that has changed places. And I thought that was fantastic. I mean, to say that, you know, Anthony Hopkins and Olivia Colman are great is like, well, yeah, they are. They always are. But also and I don't want to spoil for Katie, but the switching of actors and things like that. It really just, like you said, Skid, it sort of lends itself to having a very specific vision and a very keen way of telling it.
It's the fact that it's perspective. It's the fact that it's from victim's perspective. Is that the right word I'm thinking of? The patient. Oh my God, I'm getting worse. Yeah. But the father. It's from the father as opposed to the family. Which is the perspective that these stories have a tendency to take, much like with, as I was saying earlier, with the heroin addicts. It's the beginning of the tale as opposed to the later on in the tale, because it's a different story. It sucks you in because you suddenly have lost the ability to tell where you are, what time it is, or who these people really are. Yeah, it's very engaging. For sure. I was really caught up in this one too.
Yeah, Zeller has said that he considered the film a puzzle that has several pieces missing intentionally. And it really does put you in the position of Hopkins' character, also named Anthony, that some of it can be disconcerting, but that's exactly what his experience is. And like you were saying, Katie, in terms of putting us into Riz's character in Sound of Metal, and what, you know, the overwhelming nature of feeling something slipping away from you that you have no ability to control is it's pretty impressive the way both of those directors, Zeller and Martyr, have been able to do that.
I find that, I mean, that's one of the reasons I put off on seeing The Fathers, that I also have history of dementia in my family. And it's like, oh God, can I watch another movie? Like thinking maybe it'd been nominated just because, again, Anthony Hopkins, Olivia Colman, like the movie's not going to be bad, but is it going to be, not to say the same old thing, but the same old thing? Like I've seen this story before, maybe you'll bring something new to it. But now as I hear more about it, like I don't know that I've ever seen this story before, because all of us who have ever had to deal with a family member who has dealt with this, you deal with the family member, you don't deal with the actual diagnosis. You don't see it from their point of view. And now I'm actually fascinated to watch this movie and see it from their point of view, and how that might help, you know, heaven forbid I have to deal with it in the future.
You know, Katie, I had a similar approach to this. Sony Picture Classics sent this DVD out, actually, I think very early. It's one of the first ones I received. And we're just at the age where we're dealing with this in our families. I had no intention of seeing this film, at least not, you know, till some more time had passed. I watched it specifically because of its appearance in several categories for the nomination. And both because of and in spite of my personal relations, the film is just really powerful. Like it does a really amazing job of capturing that in a way that folks, I would just recommend you watch it, particularly if you're dealing with this in your family. Just, it's a perspective that's hard to get. So,
and it really just sums up how happy this whole category is. I mean, you know, the 40-year-old version was like, thank God this one's got, oh my God, I'm laughing. You know, yeah. It's, and I think that goes back to 2020.
100%. Absolutely. It's nice to, even if it was a little bit too long, I'm like, I don't mind if you bring it back around to another joke, or like the teams. Like her classroom, I loved pretty much every scene in that classroom. They were all brilliant. So, I mean, yes, we already talked about this film, but it was nice to watch a comedy that's true comedy. And even if you're laughing at the dark moments in life, gives you something to laugh at, because that's, I mean, life overall right now is pretty dark for pretty much everyone. So it's kind of nice to be able to laugh at the dark moments.
Well, if you're going to watch all 5 of these films as a marathon, where are you going to put 40-year-old? Like, what's your choice of order that you can actually get through them and not, you know, not too much depression, but, you know, be able to appreciate each of them? How
It was
how are you gonna
it
ride?
was 3 for me. I think I put that one in the middle. I think that One Night in Miami has the Sam Cooke ending where it's like, oh my, the world can come back. It can all happen. So that's why I would put the comedy in the middle and One Night in Miami at the end.
Sound of Metal that's kind of a hopeful ending. I mean, it's not that bleak. It's a little bit more, all right, well, okay, now I'll deal with the world the way it is and I can move on. And so, yeah, it's not all bleak, but I mean, it's just,
Yeah, it's heavy. I mean, they're heavy topics to be sure. I did watch 40-year-old version at the end of the others. So for me, it was like I was saying, it was a relief not knowing what it was to find out that there was loads of humor in it and just a story that I sort of resonated with as well, being 45 now. So yeah, I would end with that one probably because it worked out well for me.
Well, those are films. Nothing on this list that I wouldn't recommend people watch. The DGA itself this year is going to do a virtual ceremony. Are any of you guys planning to attend? Not you, Sean, of course, but maybe you can sneak on with somebody.
Thanks for pointing that out.
I RSVP'd just because it was free.
That is the big difference this year. I think last year's DGA Awards was the last personal trip I made before the pandemic came and just locked everything down. And so, yeah, I think I can recreate the open bar at my house. And I think the food here might even be a little better, but it will be free. That's a big difference.
I was going to say, I ended up, a year ago now, 2 years ago now, working on a TV show that I thought for sure was going to get nominated. And I told everybody on my staff, look, if you guys get out to LA, I'll buy the tickets. I'll buy us a table. It will have a great time because, long story, but I enjoyed working with my team so much. And then A, not only were we not nominated, but B, I'm like, there's not even a table to buy. So maybe I'll RSVP and just click drinks with them virtually and say, screw you. Not. We'll see.
I remember the one dinner that I actually went to, the one award ceremony was 2001. No, it would have been 2000, I guess. But Carl Reiner was the host and kept saying over and over again, nobody wants to watch you guys on TV. You know, like that's why nobody knows what's going on here. It's like we've got all these movie stars; they want to see them, but nobody wants to see you guys on TV. So this is the first time now it's on TV,
but only to those who RSVP.
Right?
Yeah, I did attend my virtual Producers Guild Awards, and I got to say it was pretty slickly done. So the DJs got their work cut out for them.
If anyone can do a virtual award show, if the DGA and the PGA can't, what are we doing?
Yeah.
Your PGA problem might be too many cooks in the kitchen.
But no, it was good. It was well done. I mean, they had even a proper, kind of like the way the Oscars does when they go to their commercial breaks, they have that announcer come in. Like they had this super pro voiceover lady. And I was like, wow, okay, we're doing this for real.
Interesting. Maybe that is the plus side, is that I can just watch it from home in my sweats with a drink instead of having to get all dolled up for it, which is fun, but also just kind of a pain in the ass. So, maybe it'll be worth it this year. Well,
next time we get together, we'll compare notes on how these things played out. Everybody, thanks for hopping on today. It's been great seeing you.
Thanks, kid.
Thanks, everybody.
Next, we turn our attention to the Oscar nominees. 3 episodes a week between now and the Academy Awards. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss an episode. I really appreciate your feedback. You can send email comments to skid, SKID, at belowtheline.biz. That's B-I-Z. Please rate us wherever you get your podcasts. It helps us reach new listeners. And new listeners, the best way to peruse previous episodes is at our website, belowtheline.biz. More than 70 episodes available. Maybe we talked about one of your favorite shows. If you're on Facebook, you can find photos and other behind-the-scenes materials at Podcast Below the Line. And finally, you can follow the podcast on Twitter and Instagram. It's at Pod Below the Line. Thanks to Curtis Five for our music and John Wan for our logo. The logo is available on t-shirts, mugs, and stickers at redbubble.com. As always, thanks for listening. Be safe out there.
Yeah, Sorry. I don't, that's an edit point for you later, Skid. Sorry.
I don't know if I can fix that tongue-tied bit in post, but I'll do my best.